Hello everybody, it's me, Farham. We're here with Path of Exile 2, and today we're going to be taking the monk and we are going to be turning him into Zeus. We are going to be blowing up entire maps using Herald of Thunder and Herald of Ice, and more importantly, we are going to be doing this on a budget that hopefully, with just a little bit of luck, you've managed to get while leveling your monk through red maps and up to level 90. Let's get straight on into this. We're going to start off with the passives tree. Then we'll go into the gear. There's some really important changes on the gear. Only some minor changes on the passive tree. We're going to start talking about how some of this tech interlinks and really how the guts of this works so that you can understand it and then look for where you can get bargain upgrades to really turn this thing into something really, really special. I mean, it feels really special already, but we're going to make it super special. Let's get straight into it. So just before we go over the tree, I should probably preface it by just giving a brief explanation of the tech and why we've changed so much at this point. So we've dropped out the pole circle and ring that meant that Herald of Ice could just proliferate its frost explosions out based on the enemy being chilled. They now have to be frozen for that to happen, but Herald of Ice itself can't freeze enemies. So we're having to introduce something else that can freeze at range because we're still using Ice Strike. We're still keeping that build simple. So we have introduced that, and that major change. The thing that's freezing for us now is Herald of Thunder. Herald of Thunder proliferates based on things being shocked. Herald of Ice proliferates based on things being frozen, but Herald of Thunder can't shock and Herald of Ice can't freeze. So we are using them to cover each other. So Herald of Ice is providing the shock, Herald of Thunder is providing the freeze, and between the two of them, they are proliferating out the same way that that ring used to. But to do that, we've had to change quite a few things. So let's start off then looking at the tree. So we'll start off with our ascendancies. So major changes here. We are no longer taking I Am the Blizzard. We are now taking I Am the Thunder. So everything gets 10% of damage as extra lightning damage. And we have a 25% chance to create shocked ground. So that means that 10% of the cold damage that Herald of Thunder was doing, the Herald of Ice was doing, is now lightning damage. Lightning damage can cause shock build-up, cause shocked enemies. Right. Okay, simple, right? Makes sense. That's why we've made that change. If we go up the tree, we've had to drop a little bit of defense. We can get that defense back if we get more levels, but what we've had to make sure we get is Essence of the Mountain over here for the extra freeze build-up. We're still taking our defensive tree around here. We're still taking Flow State, Crashing Wave up to Moment of Truth. We're still grabbing Immaterial. And around here, we're still grabbing our nice Energy Shield nodes from around near the Witch side. We're still grabbing Killer Instinct. Works perfectly with Chaos Inoculation. You get all 80% all of the time. It's lovely. Grabbing the crit nodes up here. We benefit really well from crit. So that's True Strike for the Jugular and Deadly Force. We're still grabbing Deep Trance, but it's these defensive nodes around to Inner Faith that we've dropped for the time being. In fact, I might even keep them dropped, looking at how things are performing. Still grabbing Spectral Ward, fantastic defense there. Come up to the Dexterity node here, we've grabbed Careful Assassin, 50% crit hit chance is really, really good. It really helps us get the ailments out with the increased damage there. Heavy Frost for the extra freeze build-up, Thin Ice for the extra freeze build-up. You'll see why we need all this freeze build-up shortly. Coming up for Patient Barrier, and we're still grabbing CI, of course, for that immunity to chaos damage. Coming down here, we're grabbing our Quarterstaff, just the first two nodes, Whirling Assault and Martial Artistry. Got Coming Calamity, for we're now getting 50% extra lightning damage and 50% extra cold damage, so this is getting even better now, although our lightning damage is kind of low across most things. You know, it's still there, it's still 50% more, it's still helping with that shock. And we're doing our work around this crit node here too. So we've got Heart Stopping, we've got Struck Through, and we've got Heart Breaking for all of the crit damage that brings us. We also have an Anointment now, or a Delirium Anointment, whatever they're called now. We've got one of the things where you put the things on the neck and it gives you a thing. It used to be called Anointments. We've got Doomsayer for this. The extra area of effect really helps the proliferation. That increases the area of the Herald explosions for both the lightning and the ice side of things. So that's nice, as well as the nice 30% damage, again helping with that affliction. The more damage you do of a type, the more chance and the more build-up you have of that affliction, and the more chance you are to flick that affliction by the time the enemy dies, right? So that's what we're looking for. So really looking for that freeze build-up now, really looking for that shock build-up, and the tree is looking pretty solid at this point. We're only level 90, so we've got 10 more points we can use. Probably do a little bit of field crafting myself on that. There's some more freeze build up, but I don't think that freeze build up is even a concern now. I think what we'd just be really wanting to push for damage at this point. So there's extra crit nodes. There's nice crit nodes here for the quarterstaff and crit bonus nodes. They would give us plentiful damage. There's definitely going to be some good nodes we can take for those last 10 points. I'm probably going to put it into crit and the best crit nodes we can. Possibly grab the defense back. Having 6,500 shield was nice. But this is looking like a solid tree for both damage and keeping CI up and running, as well as being able to enable the skills the way we need to with the ailments. Let's have a little look at the gear, because there's been some pretty big changes here. There's some pretty important stats you want to be looking at, and it's not too expensive to get it up and running. Nothing in the gear sets costs more than a divine. Most things have been picked up for exalts. It's the sort of currency that you can realistically farm while leveling this character, considering how quickly it can get into red maps. Look at the guides before. You can see how quickly it gets into red maps, even without just using the Herald of Ice and Portal Kern Ring. We'll get you there. On the gear then, there was definitely a damage component that needed to be met to ensure that this build runs smoothly. If your damage isn't high enough, then you don't proliferate through the shock very well, or the cold, depending on one of them won't be good, and you'll have a sad time. Normally the cold, actually, it seems to not proliferate very well from Herald of Thunder, and as we go into the skill gems, you'll see why there, and why we've had to go so much into the freeze. But let's take a look at our gear and what we've actually changed. So first thing you'll notice, the Portal Kern is not there anymore, and instead we have got just 2 normal rings. So the idea behind this would be to move into something that could eventually run Ingenuity, and that could eventually run some really, really juicy rings and get some really juicy magic find. That's obviously going to be stretch goals for a build like this. To get it up and running and clearing the maps to get currency to farm breach splinters and all that, though, is what I recommend. So let's go over the major changes. So on our rings, we are now looking for cold the damage to attacks and increase cold damage. These are important. We also want to make sure that we're resistance capped and all those things. But cold damage to attacks, increased cold damage is what we want. So we've got some on this breach ring, and we've got some on this pearl ring as well. There's also giving us increased lightning damage and leech physical attack damage as mana. I was hoping we could fit in close combat and do some extra stuff with the gems. At the moment, close combat doesn't fit. We run out of mana on bosses. See that in one of the showcases later, where I showcase it attempting that. But what we're looking for really is that cold damage. And this is going to add into Herald of Thunder and allow Herald of Thunder really to freeze. It's the main way that Herald of Thunder is going to be getting its cold damages from what you've got on your gear here. So you need to make sure that you're getting decent rolls there. What we've got here seems to be sufficient to keep it proliferating. We've also got a little bit on our gloves there as well. Cold damage to attacks. Lightning damage to attacks, you don't need it. You don't need it. People aren't charging any extra for it either. You get enough cold damage from what we're going to do with the gems. But on the gloves, that increased attack speed, melee skills, cold damage to attacks. If you get those, that's great. On your staff, I've upgraded a little bit. This managed to pick this up quite cheap. This just was slightly more DPS than the other staff. Like 20-30k when it came to the skill gems. But you still just want to be looking for that fizz damage, as much fizz damage as you can. If you end up getting adds cold damage, it's fine, or adds lightning damage, it's fine. Crit hit chance as well, really, really important. And apparently crit bonus, which I didn't manage to get on this, but it explains why it's so expensive, is bugged and it's multiplying the other crit bonus at the moment. It's how some of the damage numbers are getting quite silly with this. That sounds like a bug though. Crit bonus should be additive from your weapon, not multiplicative. So I imagine that will be fixed, and those things will drop in price at some point. So maybe don't blow all your divines on one of those, just in case that's a bug. Anyway, something like this you can pick up for between 50-80 exalteds. They're not too expensive. Your first real primary point of investment for upgrades probably should be the weapon. I think that's going to be where we get our most DPS from. Looking at the helmet, we've got pure energy shield. Make sure you shore up your resistances. Pure energy shield is really good for a CI build. For the neck, this is the only, what I think is currently mandatory. Well, this is a good amulet to wear in this slot. You can pick these up for about 40 exalts. They give you a lot of mana regen, it solves your mana regen problems, and that extra maximum energy shield from mana is nice. It gives you quite a lot. If we pop that off, it's 1,100 energy shield. So you're going to be hard pushed to get something that's going to give you that much in the next lot. However, I think you probably could run something with rarity. I think that probably could be changed. especially if you can get some mana regen on one of your rings, which I don't have at the moment, then I think you could swap this out, because I feel like this shield is enough, especially when you consider meditate. So maybe this could go. Anyway, thoughts on that? If people got thoughts on that one, let me know in the comments. That's something I'm deliberating and sort of toying over in my head at the moment, but next are expensive. Anyway, on the boots, so again, shore up any resistances you need, and my priority on these is to go for an ES base with 35% movement speed. I like to move around my maps fast. It's a quality of life thing. You can go for less movement speed for a cheaper set of boots, but I would strongly recommend the ES base again. So we've got enough evasion sitting at 71%, but energy shield is really important. For a CI build, of course. And on the belt, this is something that I'm probably just going to sit on. It's a crappy belt, to be honest. It gives us the resistances we need. It gives us some mana. Other than that, it's complete crap. It gets the job done. We don't need to break the bank on this piece. This would be a stretch piece to go to something like Ingenuity when you've got the right rings, as far as I'm concerned. And then we've got a charm that stops us being frozen, because being frozen sucks. And we have a big mana potion now that like fills up our entire mana pool on one press, which is what I got to try and run close combat with Ice Strike, but it was still too mana hungry. But we've got a big flask now. You don't really worry about flasks. If you've got enough mana steel, you just don't run out. Fine. Alright, that's the gear. It's relatively... Oh, I didn't show the chest. So the chest is a really high evasion, really high ES base, or reasonably high. You want at least 900 ES and 360 900 ER and 360 ES. That'll give you the 120 spirit you need to fit in all the gems we're using for the build currently. Speaking of gems, let's take a look at those, because there's been quite a lot of change here, and we'll go over the damage numbers and where things started to feel smooth. This is it. This is where all the Zeusing comes together. This is where all the lightning and the frost join up in the skill gems, and it all gets very exciting. We'll go from the top, though. We'll start with all our skills. I will be updating the written guide for this to take it to end game as well, so it's all going to be documented there. Might not be documented and updated at the time this video immediately goes out, so if you're watching it in the first hour and you're one of those 10 people, sorry. Anyway. Persistence. Supported skills have 40% more skill effect duration. This is sitting on Avatar. There's not much to put in Avatar at the moment. And then we stick in Cold, Fire, and Lightning Mastery for +1 levels. Just makes it a little bit better. Like, it lasts a bit longer. It lasts like 15 seconds, which is long enough for most boss fights, funnily enough. Apart from, well, it's long enough for some boss fights. Next up, we've got Meditate, and I'm running this a little, I don't know, I feel a little weird about it, but I think it covers for me panic pressing buttons. So I'll talk about the optionality here. 30% increased cooldown recovery rate's just good. It recovers faster. More cast speed, you're probably not going to be using Arcane Tempo anywhere else, so you might as well dump it in here, and it goes from a 0.8 cast to a 0.63 or something. What does it go to? A 0.61. A 0.82 normally or something. Anyway, and I'm running Second Wind on it. There's nowhere else I want to run Second Wind. I like having two stacks of it, and I like that it starts to recover while I'm using it. It takes a few seconds to charge up. It feels good. I understand there's some pretty cool tech you can do with weapon swaps for this, but they are exalted, so I'm not willing to spend on a weapon swap right now. But there does seem to be some stuff you can do where you can get your cast speed and then use your weapon skill points to get loads of energy recharge rate, and you can fill your energy shield in about, like... But we're not doing that just yet, so at the moment running Second Wind. I think if you were doing that tech, you'd probably take Second Wind out of it. It'd become less sorry. Next we go up to Tempest Spell, so this is our boss bashing ability. In this we are running Overabundance, because it's good to have two bells at once. It's also nice for the flow of combat that when you put your first bell out, your next hits are then charging the next bell, whereas if you don't have Overabundance, that doesn't happen. Overabundance really does feel like quality of life on this. We've then got Heft for more physical damage, Heavy Swing for more physical damage, and Font of Rage, which gives us Rage when we hit it, which stacks up to being a 30% DPS increase for us, which is quite nice. Looking on to Ice Strike, so this is where I have actually invested more than one Divine. Did buy a Perfect Jeweler's Orb. It feels much better to have a stronger Ice Strike. It just really does. Especially when it comes to just bopping small monsters as you move around the map. Right? The stronger your Ice Strike, the faster you can just bop something and start an explosion. So anyway, put that there, but you could largely take off concentrated effect and have this as a force light, it'd be fine. In here we've got martial tempo, that attack speed is integral. Ice bite, so when we do freeze things we get 35% extra damage. We've got primal armament for 25% more weapon elemental damage. Cold infusion, which I wish we could run this somewhere else, but it just doesn't fit. Nothing, it doesn't quite work. So right now we're running cold infusion in ice strike and then concentrated effect, which as I said is kind of optional, but it does really increase that damage. If you can get that 5th slot and fit this in, this feels really good as you're going through the clear. Next we've got our boss bashing ability number 2. I sometimes mostly forget to press this, but this is our way of applying curses. You can take a 4th slot on here and make this have cursed ground, but I just don't feel any need. The only time I ever really feel like using it is on bosses. So Hand of Chila, it will apply any curses that are socketed into it. So these are actual spell skills, they're not support gems. We've got Hypothermia first, then Freezing Mark, supported by Heightened Curse. Just reduces their cold resistance, right? It gives us more freeze build up. Just good things that we want to help the flow of combat. Largely, I forget to press it. If you don't forget to press it, it'll help you. Next up, we've got our burst buff skill. We're basically an aura stacker, so we're going to be talking about all our auras now. We've got Herald of Ice, so this is where we'll talk about the tech in a little bit more detail. So, the gems have changed a lot. Herald of Ice is now Herald of Ice, but secretly Thunder. So you can see how now we're doing main hand lightning damage, 1078 to 3391, which is actually more than our top end cold damage. How and why are we doing this? Well, we cannot cause freeze build-up, but we can build shock build-up. Shock will trigger Herald of Thunder. Herald of Thunder can cause freeze build-up, which will trigger Herald of Ice. And thus, the circle is complete. So in Herald of Ice, we have dropped in more area of effect, because explosion radius helps proliferation. That's up to almost 3 meters. That's chunky. Lightning infusion, so we're taking 25% of our damage and converting that to lightning. We're doing less cold damage, but that's okay. We're doing enough damage that things just blow up, so it's fine. We've got conduction, so we have 100% more chance to shock. Shock, what we need to cause the Herald of Thunder, right? And then we've got innovate, so that when we do kill a shocked enemy, we get 35% more lightning damage, helping us to shock even more. You'll notice through the tree, we haven't taken that many nodes that are saying increased chance to shock. All of the nodes we've taken are increased chance to freeze, and that's because Herald of Ice is actually doing quite a lot of lightning damage here, and it's got quite a lot of strong buffs within it to help things like shock, but it proliferates just fine. I suppose next up we should talk about its pairing, and then we'll do the buffs in the middle. So next up on the other side of this coin, we've got Herald of Thunder. So let's have a look at this and see what the core differences are. So if we look at our bolt, it's much smaller proliferation radius, that's one thing, but look at that cold damage. Its top end is only 1,421. That's half. That's half of where we were with Herald of Ice. So we need that extra freeze build up on the tree. If we can get that cold damage higher and higher, we might find that we can start to drop some freeze build up and use those in more favourable nodes. But at the moment, with damage numbers about where we are, the tree complements this to make sure things are frozen, things are shocked, everything works, everything comes together. So, let's have a look at what we've got in Herald of Thunder then. We've got Glaciation for 50% more freeze build-up. We need it freezing. We've got Long Shot, because this is generally hitting things farther away from us. The 35% more attack damage does hit that cold damage. We've got Ambush, again, as this is what's proliferating out, and this is what generally, second part of the chain, they're going to be further away from where you're starting with the Ice Strike. You generally get 100% crit chance, because it's going to just strike new enemies each time, so you get that. Enemies will normally be on full life, or I think full life actually... Does full life count as above 80% life in PoE? I think it does. I think it counts as above 80%. But anyway, that's going to give you that extra damage for that extra hit, which is going to give you more cold damage, which is going to give you more freeze build-up. And lastly, I was really toying and messing around with what worked here, and things weren't feeling smooth, but I dropped cold penetration into here, and oh my god, because of... And I believe this is how it's working. Because of this node here, hits ignore non-negative elemental resistances of frozen enemies. It just seems to... And I feel like it's penetrating when they're not frozen, it feel like it's penetrating when they're chilled. I mean, it's not. But anyway, it's just penetrating 30% resistances, and it goes... Yeah, it really, really increased the damage. It really felt like it was increasing the damage, and it really started to feel smooth with that gem. So that's how I got the gem set up for Herald of Thunder. Around these DPS numbers that we're seeing on the screen here, with this tree, everything starts to feel smooth in 15s and 16s. As long as you don't take jumped up elemental resistances on enemies and things like that. It's not foreshadowing or anything. So let's take a look at our last few gems. So first defensive gem in here is Wind Dancer, which has Blind, Culling Strike, and Cold Exposure. I think we get a pretty good example of exactly how that works in the showcase map, but if something hits you, they just explode. It's nice. And that's Wind Dancer that does that. Next up, we've got our other boss or rare ability. So this is Elemental Invocation. And what this does, this will cast a socketed spell based on accumulated energy, so it can cast it lots of times at once. And what we're casting with it is Ball Lightning. Ball Lightning is moving slower. It's 3 of them at once, and we get extra energy, so we just build these things up really quick. But what this does is it rings the bells. So the Ball Lightnings can rock the bell ring, and because you're firing 21 balls at once, I think it is, and they all hit the bell. It just does it does massive burst damage. As long as you set up and get all the skills right, it's really good. It's really, really strong. And then we've got 2 more defensive complements, and you could argue against the effectiveness of one of these, but I feel like it keeps you topped up. We've got Ghost Dance, so if we get hit, we recover energy shield equal to 5% of our invasion. We've got a lot of evasions, so that actually works out at quite a chunk of energy shield that comes back. And we've got Grim Feast, which puts these little white things on the floor, and then you run over them, they give you 37 energy shield back, and that can go up to twice your max energy shield. Much the same as when you press Meditate, that can take you to twice your max energy shield. So you can press Meditate, take a couple of light hits, and then Grim Feast will top you back up. And you're generally running around with this really big, juicy, effective health pool. And as long as you keep an eye on it, like there's not much that can... I haven't found much that can one-shot you unless you do really, really silly stuff and run really silly modifiers. Speaking of running modifiers, this thing needs to be shown off in a map. So we've got a couple coming up. I've got one map that I set up properly, and then one that I set up a bit wrong. And I'm just going to show you the boss fight from the one where I set up a bit wrong, and that will come second. But yeah, that's the build, and I hope there's some good knowledge in here. And if you guys have got any comments or things that you think, you should be doing this, or fool, your build's only 60% efficient because you're some tourist, then do let me know in the comments, and I'll fix it up. Cool. On with the showcase. Alright, and then let's showcase this thing in a tier 15. So I've got a tier 16 showcase as well. I'll pop that one on the end just so you can watch that boss fight. It's ridiculous. But anyway, let's showcase this somewhere where it should be played. So we've got a boss, we've got a breach, we've got +2 levels, we've got a tier 15. So we should be coming in at eye level 81. It's corrupted, so it's going to double corrupt on the way in because of the way we've got our Atlas set up. It's got Burning Ground. I'd be happy if the Burning Ground got corrupted to something else. But we might be playing with Burning Ground, which is annoying with an energy shield build. But we'll make do. What have we got? So, it's gone down to level 80. Of course, it's gone down to a tier 14. Because that's what always happens whenever I try and showcase any key. It just drops a level. Alright, well, let's showcase it anyway. It's going to be more fun now. Things will explode with more veracity. And that's what you want. See, look. Just explosions. Just explosions and balls. It's the breach. Let's just crack it straight open. Let's just get into it. Got all the shield going anyway. But I've also got a better loot filter going. So now when I click on random stuff, it's generally stuff I can maybe be bothered to craft. But look at this. It's beautiful. The explosions were like Zeus. We're like calling down lightning from up high. Power! Such shield! Such tank! It's got everything you could possibly want. All in one roof. The only thing it doesn't have on it at the moment is Magic Find, because I'm too cheap to afford Magic Find. Oh, there's an actual boss there. He's gone now. God, look at it. It's just glorious. Amazing. Power? This is done on less than 10 divs. I'll have to chalk up exactly how much I've spent, but I purposely have not spent more than a divine on any item, but managed to pick up everything cheap, most things for exalted. It's just so fun. I hope the fun is radiating out. This is... I spent the whole first, like, I don't know, 2 weeks playing minion build, just running around behind my minions, feeling like I didn't really have any direct control over the flow of combat. And this is just... I need to shield up. Guys, we need to shield up. That was Gale Force. Double shield. That was Gale Force again. Gale Force is good. Blows everything up. So we do... There are some specific things we need to... I went over this in the gear section. There are some specific things you want to be looking for in the gear to be able to do this with the lightning and not have to do it with the porcelain ring. Porcelain kiln ring. However, the single target DPS we're going to see is much higher. Well, hopefully, so I'm going to press all the buttons correctly. And everything, you can just see how this can now start to scale. So we found the boss. Let's just... I just used... we still got... So it's not the fastest boss killer. It's probably its weakest point is boss killing, but I think it's becoming better than average now. It's becoming now above average. Because it can... I think its main draw in the boss fights is the fact that it can stand toe to toe. You're going to see that in the next little clip. I'm going to show you a little clip where we fight a boss that has 67% elemental resistance. We do it while using close combat so that we have literally no mana and we have to fight the boss for about 5 minutes and we can just stand there. And it's... yeah. Let's get this map cleared up. Enjoy the pleasurable part of map. Oh, we took a bit of damage, guys. We're not on full shield anymore. What do we do when we're not on full shield? That's right. We burn, kill, maim. Blood for the blood god. We just meditate. It's kind of the opposite of blood for the blood god. It's like actually the opposite of blood for the blood god. Oh, we're full. We've picked up too much shite. But less shite. It's happened less times. This was... There's the last elite. So we should go say hi. And you can see the lightning. We are the lightning. Oh god. Right, we can just meditate. And then blow him up with a cold proliferation. And that's basically how the build works. It's absolutely mad. I haven't tried against pinnacle bosses and stuff. I don't know how well it would do. I think you'd probably have to know the fight, which I don't know the fight. So, yeah. Anyway. So, there's going to be another clip that is just... when this goes a bit wrong and you pick bad modifiers and what this looks like when you pick the wrong map modifiers. And yeah, I guess it's kind of like an outro. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, guys. And if you'd like me to make another video on this, showing what this is like with investment, then I will continue playing it and put the investment in. I might even sell up my minion Mancer and get the investment done in double time because I'm having an awesome amount of fun with this one. There's videos, build guide in the description of how to get here from the start. I've done it in about 4 or 5 days, but I've been literally just playing Path of Exile, not doing anything else. This is the sort of thing you could build out over a season, over a league, as long as they don't change anything too major, of course. And yeah, guys, I hope you've enjoyed it. Catch you later. So you put on your curse. You get really annoyed that she's got an energy shield. It's going to be really annoying. Might beat us because of the energy shield. No, surely not. We're almost through the energy shield. Yeah, you do. Yeah, you need mana. We'll probably take this opportunity to get our shield back. No, she's gonna get hers back, of course. What an annoying boss. I really think the energy shield is so powerful that the bosses get. You need energy shield. What you need. Oh, friends, nice. Even the full bell doesn't go through it. Of all the things to get. Lightning mirages when hit as well, so we just never get any regen. Natural regen, I mean. This is how you slow mode bosses. Oh, she's gonna have to come back with shield. Come on. Yeet mana. Because the boss fight wasn't supposed to last this long. Just some chaos damage would just be so nice. Oh, you should have some mana charges now. Right, so when the bosses have got shields, but there you go. There is testament to the tank of this thing, right? It can literally just stand and fight.